All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Boy, do I have a jam-packed one for you today. I'm actually very excited for today's show. So we're going to get to it in just a minute. Election results, the uncommitted vote in Michigan. How did that do against Biden? How did Trump fare against Nikki Haley? We're going to read the tea leaves. I'll give you all the specifics. We have Jon Stewart takes on Netanyahu. Biden goes on Seth Meyers. Destiny takes on Piers Morgan. I mean, we got stories pouring out of every orifice we have. And that Diddy story, man. I'm not covering this in the show. I'm not covering the Diddy allegations in the show, but holy cow, we are at Harvey Weinstein, I don't know how to say it, level allegations now. I mean, the new case against him is like a zillion pages long, and it's got pictures, it's got audio messages, it's got allegations, including against Meek Mill and Usher and Diddy shooting guns. SA, as they say, stands for, I'll let you fill in the blank, but I think you know what that means if you're online. Woo! It's wild. Go check that out. It's a little bit, it's not really my beat, but I almost covered it. But I decided against it because we had so much other stuff to get to today. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Everybody subscribe to the channel. I would deeply, deeply appreciate it. All right, so let us start with some Michigan results here. So we're going to go to the Democratic results first, then we'll get to the Republican results. Now, it's no surprise for either side what ended up happening in terms of the overall takeaway, the macro picture. Biden, of course, won, and Trump, of course, won. But the specifics is where it gets really interesting. So with 95% in, we have Biden getting 81.1%, Uncommitted getting 13.3%, Marianne Williamson, who's not in the race, more on that in a minute. At the time, she wasn't in the race. I'll tell you what's happened since then. She got 3%, beating Dean Phillips, who's still in the race, and got 2.7%. Okay, there's a lot to say here. So if you're a casual observer, you might look at this and go, 81.1% for Biden, 617,728 votes. This is a great night for Biden. This is a wonderful night for Biden. Well, the uncommitted movement, remember, guys, this was a very specific attempt to say, we are against your policy in Gaza, Mr. President. Stop arming and funding Netanyahu. Stop facilitating a genocide. It's unacceptable. The uncommitted movement came out and said, if we get like 10,000 votes, we'll consider it a success. 10,000. What did they end up getting? 100,960. Now, the reason why this is a big deal is the margin in Michigan in order to win in the general election. Biden beat Trump by about 150,000 votes in 2020 in Michigan. Well, guess what? You add up the uncommitted number, the number that voted for Marianne, and the number that voted for Dean Phillips, and what are we at? About 143,000? We're talking razor thin here. There is no margin for error. So this is a message clearly sent to Joe Biden. You have to change course. By the way, the community where Uncommitted did the best, Dearborn, Michigan, where all the Arab Americans and Muslim Americans are situated. Uncommitted beat Joe Biden in Dearborn. 56.22% to 40.37%. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a big deal. I want you to remember, Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump in Michigan in 2016. What was the margin? Trump won by 10,000 votes. 10,000. Michigan is razor thin. And with 100,000 people coming out and saying to Joe Biden, we don't agree on Gaza. You have to go in a different direction. This is going to lead to some panic at the White House. And it might actually make him rethink, hey, what are we doing here in terms of Gaza? Now, my guess is if they change anything, it'll just be lip service. This is what they do. In fact, Biden came out the other day before the primary and said, yeah, we're hoping to get a ceasefire by Monday. Yeah, Monday, that's right. And the speculation was the reason he's saying this now is because it's before the Michigan primary. It's like a desperate last-minute attempt to say, please, Michigan Democrats, don't embarrass me. But I got bad news for you. This is embarrassing for Biden. It absolutely is. The cope leading into the election was, well, every uncommitted, vote in a situation like this gets about 20,000 votes. That's what the media and the establishment Democrats were saying. Yeah, it might get like 20,000 votes every time it gets 20,000 votes. The example they use is when Barack Obama was running unopposed in 2012, Uncommited got about 20,000 votes, right? This is 100,000 votes. So in the moment on CNN, and we'll have more on this a little later, but in the moment, CNN was kind of acknowledging this for what it was. Ooh, this is bad news for Joe. Because then, what's going to happen in the general election? He's got a lot of work to do to gain back trust and gain back votes in the general election. But after like an hour or two, you saw the spin started to kick into effect. And they started to, actually, no, you know what? Actually, no. If you look at the percentage overall, it's 81.1%. That's a very large percentage. I don't see, what the big deal is. This was actually a phenomenal night for Joe. And again, I want to be clear. The people who are saying that, they're just wrong. They are just wrong. And by the way, a lot of the people who are saying, this is no big deal, it's no big deal. Well, they seem really upset and animated over this. Like, their eyeballs are turning red and popping out of their heads. They're like, this is not a big deal, it's not a big deal. Really? Why do you seem so concerned about it? Because they know. The margin last time was 150,000. We have 144,000 defections here. 100 or whatever it is, 143, whatever it is. We're right there. Clear message, he's got to change direction. So there's the Democratic side. For a while, there wasn't a single district where Uncommitted was getting under 10%. So in other words, yes, it was predominantly the Arab American and Muslim American communities that were coming out and saying, not acceptable, what's happening in Gaza, but also young voters. There was a lot of like college towns where, Uncommitted was doing pretty damn well, was doing pretty strong. This far exceeded the expectations of the Uncommitted movement, which just kicked into gear, a few weeks back or whatever it was. They have no money whatsoever, and they ended up doing phenomenally well. So this is a message to Joe. Hopefully the White House gets it, but I don't know. They might already be digesting the spin and regurgitating the spin and pretending like there's no problem. Well, that's on you then, right? That's on you if you don't adjust and then you go into the general election and then you lose Michigan, right? So that is a big deal. Now, let's get to the Republicans. So on the Republican side, we have Trump getting 68.2% of the vote, 756,636 votes. Nikki Haley gets 26.6% of the vote. That's 294,817 votes. It's always interesting to me when you have like the 3% were uncommitted on the Republican side, far less on the Republican side. But even Ron DeSantis managed to get 1.2%. That's 13,366 votes. Okay. But, you look at this, and again, the casual political observer might say, oh, Trump absolutely crushed it here. So, just like the casual observer might look at the results and say, Biden absolutely crushed it here. Guys, here's the reality. So the 538 polling average leading into the election had Trump at 78.7% of the vote. He ended up with 68%. That means he underperformed the polls by 10 percentage points. And this is a trend now with Trump, where in every single primary to this point, in every single state we've been to so far, Trump underperforms by 7 points here, by 8 points here, by 8 points there, by 10 points here. So for whatever reason, I don't know why this is, the polls are reflecting that Trump is stronger than he actually is. So the main takeaway from the Michigan results is that the Republicans have a soft-ass candidate who's going to struggle in a general election, and the Democrats have a soft-ass candidate who's going to struggle in a general election. Both of them have massive, massive weaknesses, and it's being exposed when you actually go to vote and the results come in. So this is a big deal in both directions. Underperforming by 10 percentage points? Again, how's that going to bode for Donald Trump in a general election when it comes to Michigan? Basically, we're engaged in a race to the bottom right now between Biden and Trump. So, man, I told you guys before, when I remember the 2016 race, what pops to mind is we've never had a situation like this where it's like the American people have to choose, who do you hate the least? Like, that was the choice. Not who do you like, who do you think is going to do good things for the country. It's like, who do you hate the least? Now we're right back in that boat. It might even be worse. 100,000 uncommitted, about 44,000 for Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips as well. Right at that margin, almost at that 150K number, which Biden won by last time. Trump underperforming by 10 percentage points. Big deal, man. This big deal across the board. They are weak. They are pudding. As Kobe Bryant would say to his teammates when they're not playing hard, they're soft as Charmin. All right, so now I got to give you the other big news of the night. Got to give it to you. So I noticed early on when the votes were coming in, oh my God, Marianne Williamson is beating Dean Phillips, and she's not even in the race anymore. Okay. The degree to which that is embarrassing for Dean Phillips is immeasurable. It's immeasurable. You're losing to Marianne, and she's not even in the race anymore. And you are currently the only other option from Joe Biden that's on the ballot, to be clear. Because, by the way, Cenk is still trying to be in the race, still has the court cases. Hey, can he not? Is because he's a naturalized citizen, not a natural-born citizen. And by the way, he wanted people to vote instead of vote uncommitted, vote for him, because the uncommitted vote was for a ceasefire, and he goes, I'm for a ceasefire, so just vote for me, a candidate who will try to deliver a ceasefire, right? But that didn't pan out. But Marianne Williamson beat Dean Phillips. Now, early on in the night, you could have looked at it and said, it's flash in the pan, it'll change, Dean Phillips will surge, and she'll end up... No! Marianne Williamson ended up beating Dean Phillips. But having said that, what was the exact number again? Let me take a look. 3%. Marianne got 3%, Dean Phillips got 2.7%. Okay. So Marianne looks at that, and she goes, holy shit, I think she was just as surprised by it as anybody else. And her takeaway is, man, in her words, this is like a slow-motion car crash that we're all watching, and Joe Biden is phenomenally weak. And so she comes out and says, you know what? I'm unsuspending my campaign. I'm jumping back in. What? All right, so let me play this for you, and then we'll react to it.
Hey, I have an important announcement to make. As of today, I am unsuspending my campaign for the presidency of the United States. I had suspended it because I was losing the horse race. But something so much more important than the horse race is at stake here, and we must respond. Right now, we have a fascist standing at the door. Everybody's all upset about it. Well, we should be upset about it. But we're not going to defeat the fascist by what? What is President Biden offering? He says, let's finish the job. Well, I hope you realize we're talking about millions of voters for whom they can't even survive unless they work at 2 or 3 jobs. What is he saying beyond, the economy is really doing well? Are you kidding me? For whom? It's doing well for 20% of us, and that's to be celebrated. But that 20% is on an island surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair. 39% of the American people report that they are regularly skipping meals in order to pay their rent. Over half of bankruptcies come from medical debt 1 in 4 Americans carry. We're now living at a time where economic anxiety is experienced by the majority of people living paycheck to paycheck, the minimum wage not having been raised, and increasing militarism. What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you what's going on here. We, the people, basically don't own this country right now. Abraham Lincoln said that people who died in the Civil War for the Union had died so that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth. It's perishing now, and on our watch. We're a government for all intents and purposes of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations, and we need a president who says this. And we need a president who lays down an agenda and says, we're going to turn this thing around. We're going to take an economic U-turn, who inspires the American people. We can do different. We can do better. That's what it is to make this country great again, to return it to a time when we actually had a thriving middle class. And you don't do that with Donald Trump's policies. You do that with Medicare for all. You do it with tuition-free college and tech school. You do it with using the Higher Education Act, the entire college loan debt. You do it with paid family leave and subsidized child care. You do it with guaranteed housing, guaranteed living wage, guaranteed sick pay. We change this world. We make it more beautiful. We have to respond to Donald Trump's dark vision of possibility. We need to have a peace academy as well as a military academy. We have to have armies of peace builders as well as armies of military personnel. We need to play peace games, not just war games. We need to learn to wage peace. We need to end America's war on drugs. We need to have a ceasefire now. We need to have reparations. We need to have policies that actually expand opportunities and thus expand the economy and expand the possibilities for the future for our children and our children's children. We need to ramp down, not keep ramping up fossil fuel extraction. We need to take this country in a direction of hope and possibility and regeneration. That is the vision that will defeat Donald Trump, not let us finish the job. We're watching a car crash in slow motion here. Everybody knows it.
So she decides I'm jumping back in the race. I love Marianne. I love her. She's phenomenal. She was my candidate from early on. I don't understand why she's doing this. I don't. I mean, maybe it's like, I just want to be in there for Super Tuesday to see what happens, and then I'll drop out again. But, like, there's no path to victory. The world handed you a giant W, Marianne, by you not even being in the race and defeating Dean Phillips. You got to walk away with your head held high. But, you know, don't turn the W into an L by jumping back in. And then if you keep getting 3%, 4%, well, what's the point, right? So I love her. Her policy vision is correct. I wish she was the person. The timing just didn't work out. So I don't quite understand what the point of this is, right? I don't quite understand. And, you know, if she was going to jump back in, and if she was going to say, man, Uncommitted performed amazingly well. That's 100,000 people who said, sorry, Joe, you got to change course on Gaza. If she said, I'll be the vessel for the ceasefire. My whole thing is a ceasefire. My whole campaign is to say, we are changing course in Gaza. We are standing up to Netanyahu. We are cutting off the money. We are cutting off the weapons. We're going to condemn him at the UN. But first and foremost, we need a full and complete permanent ceasefire. Well, I think people would call it opportunistic, but at the same time, there's a logic there. There's an argument there. But she jumps back in and she goes, this is the same, not that she's wrong on the policies, but this is the same policy list and the same message as it was when she came in the first time, right? So I just don't understand what the point is here, because let's say, for argument's sake, she does even better moving forward. She gets 15% moving forward. Still, at the end of the day, it's not going to be enough, right? So I don't quite understand what she's doing here. I mean, my guess is she saw that she was beating Dean Phillips without even being in the race, and she's like, well, screw this. I'm gonna capitalize on that moment and try to make something of it and spark something bigger. But ultimately, I don't know. I don't think that's gonna work out. I don't think that's going to work out. And that there's nothing but love and respect for Marianne. Like I said, she was my candidate, and I agree with her policy vision. But I guess I just don't see the point in it, right? Because it's not going to be a W overall. And if it's not going to be a W, then what are we doing here? So it looks like the thing that has the most legs, honestly, appears to be the uncommitted thing. And so there's a bunch of states coming up that also have an uncommitted line that you can vote for in various primaries, and that's probably going to be the path to express dissatisfaction, right? And the uncommitted move is an attempt to really sort of bully the administration into acknowledging their mistakes and saying, we have to change course on Gaza, we have to stand up to Netanyahu, we have to cut off the money and weapons. And what will it take to get them to do that? Honestly, I don't even know the answer to that question. Does uncommitted have to get 30% in a state for them to really say, oh, okay, or was this enough? Was it enough that there were 100,000 to make Biden really go, holy shit, this is a different world. I'm still living in 1993 where everybody's a Zionist and proud of it. And, you always side with Israel no matter what, and there's no electoral downside to that. Well, the world has changed, Joe. The world has changed, and there's a genocide going on now. And in that scenario, you should stand up. Duh. You should fight back. You should cut off the money and the weapons. You should condemn them. So I don't know if this will make them realize it. I don't know if other states have to go massive numbers uncommitted for them to realize it. But that appears to be the thing that has the most legs at the moment. And so, like I said, the media initially acknowledged, oh, this is a big deal and this is bad for Biden. But then the spin kicked into effect soon thereafter. And I'm sure today it's wall-to-wall on corporate media. Oh, no, Biden did great. This is nothing to worry about. I certainly see all the resistance liberal DNC hacks on Twitter saying, bro, this was a really strong night for Biden. I don't even know what you're talking about, bro. If this is a strong night for Biden, then it was also a strong night for Trump. And it wasn't. It just wasn't for either. If Trump's underperforming by 10 percentage points, if Biden has 100,000 defections who are saying, uncommitted, change your policy in Gaza, that's bad for both of them. That's bad for both of them. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but wild, wild night all around. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.